Race Skip is a story of almost. Considered by many to be the holy grail of Ratchet 2 skips, the races are relatively glitch-free. Any form of early shortcut or a major skip in the race would be a gold mine. This is the story of the community's struggles, along with my own struggles, to find this elusive race skip. This story begins with a speedrunner who goes by the name of Torpedo.
Alright, so where's this weird angle? What the? Wait a minute.
This bizarre clip has never been replicated and imposes many questions. Why did this clip not push him into the shortcut? Are the shortcuts loaded during normal races? This was eventually written off as a 1 in 1 million clip, as runners have wasted hours to replicate this, to no success. The next runner to take a crack at this skip to bizarre results would be Mr. Jarnet Man. He throws a spider bot against the bike and causes a deload of sorts to the track. This was consistent but seemingly only bugged out the camera. While many believed this would lead to something like Race Skip, no major leads or plan to use this was ever made. During this time, Jarnet would also find a way to clip out of the joba race, but would only be useful to land back on the track. This obviously did not save time nor prove to be useful. It would inspire many community members to look as well, and one of them was me. I had many ideas and decided to look deeper into a lot of these, but I would come up empty-handed. I got a bizarre clip where there's a racer on top of my head, pictured here, really interesting but ultimately useless. A jump backwards to the shortcut here, and a bizarre clip here. If you go like this, you wiggle the stick, you charge without holding X, you can clip. But I don't know what to do with it then. I can't. While a lot of these were cool, and they might seem like they have a little bit of potential, a year would pass until anything serious happened. This would be the first legitimate form of a race skip, but wasn't seen as positive as you might expect. PS3 has a weird glitch that occurs almost naturally. If you play until joba, and you get the nanotech ending on the second race, the game remembers that you have race 3 unlocked. If you finish the game, enter challenge mode, and make it all the way to Barlow in the same session, you will spawn in race 3 instead of race 1. This is only useful to obtain the skill point, and you still have to go back and do race 1 to get the coordinates for Felsen. Again, this is cool, but ends up being PS3 only, and this isn't the holy grail we're looking for. PS3 is used for only 2 categories on the speedrun leaderboards, and this glitch only works for one of them, and it's a decently unpopular category, and thus, the search will continue. If we wanted our massive breakthrough, we would need to have the skip work on both consoles, so I decided to look for something else on PS2. One of my more unique findings would be the ability to cancel the electrolyzer puzzles by shooting a Vis-a-bomb. Shooting this Vis-a-bomb gives us control during the cutscene, and we're free to move around. Once the puzzle finishes, you'll notice that we are not pulled into the race. If I move back over to the race now, I will get pulled in due to the lasting trigger. Excitement arose to Vis-a-bomb into this lasting trigger and put Ratchet into the race without the bike. This was a bold theory, but there was sadly not enough room to Vis-a-bomb, and the question of what would happen would go unanswered. If we wanted to have a breakthrough, we would need better testing methods, and I knew just what I had to do. The Hidden Palace houses earlier builds of many games, and Ratchet 2 has a particularly useful build. This build was released September 9th, 2003, and the final release of the game was on November 11th. Before the game launched, they removed a lot of content, such as this giant plant here, and shrubbery around the ship. This elevator here doesn't require the dynamo and is detailed in full color. There are many more changes on this build, but that's for another video. What I'm most interested in here is the debug menu. This menu can be accessed by inputting up, down, left, right, square, and then pressing R3. Once I pull up this menu, I can load all kinds of useful information such as Ratchet's position, how many enemies are on a level, how long I've been on said level, and invulnerability, with much more for another video. A while back, I found an exploit where if you enter an arena shooting a Vis-a-bomb into it, you gain control during the cutscene. Now that you have control, if you pull back left, Ratchet will get burned in place and not be pulled into the cutscene. From here you can explore as much as you like, but to get the camera back we will need to use the spider bot. Throwing the spider bot centers the camera back on Ratchet, and now we're free to run around. I was curious how high up the Joba arena was, so I decided to wall climb out of the arena. Once I'm high as I can go, I glide out of the arena and look up. I notice a familiar object out there. If I zoom in, you can tell it's one of the boost pads from the race. Using the development build, I gain control of Ratchet and float him up to the area that I saw. My hypothesis was correct. The race is loaded at the exact same time that you're in the arena. This means that if there's any sort of infinite height method, there is a foolproof way to get the early nanotech. My only question is now, what am I up against? How high is the barrier I have to go against? This is an inspiring find, as any sort of jump we have on the bike would let us clear the gap. The only problem is, of course, there seems to be no slopes in sight. Many loose ends were beginning to be tied up as I posted this frantic message in the Discord. I now had Ratchet fully on the racetrack, and panic ensued. The only thing Jarnet was doing wrong years prior was standing a little bit too far to the right. Had he been a little bit more left, he would have found it. The only issue now is that when Ratchet is on the track, he is sadly glued to the end of the bike. Since weapons were programmed for the bike, using L1 and circle, any effort to equip a weapon would not work, as they were already mapped for the bike. I would have to come to terms with the fact that this was going to be a dead end for this glitch. And now, things once again would go silent. Almost a full year had passed now. I would find the answer to a question I'd been looking for a long time. Whenever the game gives you a gadget, you must complete the tutorial before continuing. This went fully unchecked when considering the shortcuts menu. If you use a race shortcut after getting the gadget, you won't spawn at the race, you'll spawn at the gadget. This is important to note because this spawns a massive trigger to warp you in. And now, I was finally about to answer my question. What happens if I Vis-a-bomb into the race trigger? Nothing. Nothing at all. Another blow to the gut on race skip. Things were starting to feel grim. I was running out of leads, and things were starting to feel impossible. I did have hope that if an infinite height exploit would be found, but I was starting to doubt if that would ever happen. Surely it would have been found by now. And then, out of nowhere, something strange started to happen. I had seen jumps like this before, but never realized you could do them so close to the shortcut. These weren't very high, so I wrote them off pretty fast. But then, it happened. If I slow this down, you can literally see the gears turn in my head as I hit this jump. I've never seen a jump this high, and I knew I finally had something good on my hands. And one night, at nearly 4 in the morning, I struck gold and knew who I had to call. I called out the only person I knew that could help. Speedrunner Mobius. That's right, after 4 years of searching and many community efforts, we finally had our first major skip in any of the races. It would work on both consoles, and alone save nearly 3 minutes in 100%, and a few seconds in any category that visits the race, such as all platinum bolts. Addressing the elephant in the room here, this is early nanotech, not a full-on race skip. This does in fact skip one of the races in 100%, but does not skip doing races period, and thus isn't defined as a race skip. Time will still tell if we can find a way to skip the skill point on Barlow, getting a race of 2:10 or lower, the current world record being a 2:12, so we would only need to find about a second more, or maybe even a full-on way to skip the race super quickly, abusing checkpoints. Only time will tell what's next for race skip. If you enjoyed this video, I highly suggest to follow my Twitch page. There I will be streaming Ratchet and Clank 2 100%, which uses this new skip, and will be closing in on sub 3 hours and 30 minutes. Thank you to everyone who watched this all the way through. This is easily my biggest project yet, and I appreciate everyone who tuned in. Special thanks to Yoandy and Mobius for all their help here. Stay beautiful, everyone.